What is going on, everybody, and welcome to another video. Today we're checking out Feature History Polish-Soviet War. This was a request by, I think, General Kenobi. There's a reason I remember that name, just because why not. Anyway, I'm pretty sure he requested Polish-Soviet War by Feature History, and then he requested the rule of Saddam Hussein or something like that, which I have saved, so I don't remember exactly what it's called, but we'll get into that one after this. Yeah, be sure to get your suggestions in the comments below to let me know what I should watch next. Be sure to subscribe so you never miss a video, and hit the bell, because then you'll be notified, and you will definitely never miss a video if you hit the bell. But anyway, let's get into Feature History Polish-Soviet War. I have no idea what this is. We have checked out one Feature History video before, or a two-part before, which was Fall of Yugoslavia. And now, we know his videos are good, so let's get into this video.
Today, we're going to talk about when Poland won its independence. Won its independence from Russia. From Russia in the 20th century. From Russia in the 20th century through the means of conventional warfare. There we go, thank you.
Poland won its independence multiple times.
Hello and welcome to Feature History, featuring the Polish-Soviet War, a war that came immediately after the war to end all wars. Ironic, isn't it? In fact, a lot of conflicts didn't even wait for the Great War to end before starting. The Russian Revolution, the rise of the Bolsheviks, and the period of a very confusing Eastern European map all started in about 1917. Of course, it wasn't just the Russians getting in on the fun, it was a whole Slavic salad of conflict. And for this episode, we're shining the spotlight on our beloved friends, brothers, and plumbers, the Polish.
Plumbers.
Let's go back to the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth.
Just want to pause. You said plumbers, but in the UK, the whole stereotype is builders, you know? Because when a lot of Polish people come over and they do construction jobs, but that's for most things for most immigrants, you know. Construction is easy job to get into because you don't precisely need qualifications, and it pays pretty well compared to other jobs because it's hard labor. So when you move countries, a lot of the time, a lot of people go into construction. But the stereotype in England is that Polish are builders, not plumbers. But it is what it is. Maybe in the US it's plumbers. I don't know.
Which was a state that existed from 1569 to, spoilers, 1795. As well as being a mouthful to say, the Commonwealth was a fairly serious regional power. Hell, in the 17th century, it almost annexed Russia. But as said, it came to an end, as it had weakened further and further until it was partitioned by three empires: Russia, Prussia, and Austria. Their sovereignty had been eliminated. However, their culture never died. Polish nationalism would be a genuine concern for a long time. Skipping to the First World War, Germany, Austria-Hungary, and Russia, and also the rest of the world, went to war. A plethora of fighting, dying, and destruction was suffered by the Polish as the empires engaged a back and forth across the region. It was frustrating, sure, but the Polish nationalists saw it as an opportunity for independence. The statesman Józef Piłsudski proposed that the Polish would have to be active in the war, fighting for an empire so that empire would fight for them. Which empire though? Well, you know. Yeah, that wasn't so clear. Germany and Austria-Hungary gave a shot at winning Polish loyalty, as they seriously needed it. From 1915, Germany had been pushing itself as the liberators of the Polish suffering Russian subjugation, because Germany would never subjugate the Polish. In 1916, the two empires, after talks with the esteemed Piłsudski and a Polish delegation, created the Kingdom of Poland, which even had a constitution, but no pesky sort of government or borders. The former would spawn in 1917, but Piłsudski foresaw Germany's defeat and urged all Polish troops to not swear any oath, leading to his resignation and arrest. Regardless, through his actions the chance of Polish independence started to look more like a sure thing, though of course Poland wasn't just a part of Germany and Austria-Hungary, but also Russia, who too saw its own fair share of the woes of war. In the Tsardom of Russia, things had been going tits up for Nicholas II since 1905. Constantly urged to reform or resign, he'd constantly respond with crackdowns and middle fingers. The World War turned unrest to crisis, and the Tsar's days dwindled alongside every moment the war continued. In February 1917, a women's protest would turn into a workers' protest, which turned into an army mutiny, which turned into a riot, eventually turning into the Tsar's abdication. The power of rule had been passed from Romanov to revolution. The seat of power rested in Petrograd, formerly known as St. Petersburg, before it was decided that German shit don't fly here. The State Duma, or National Assembly, set up a provisional government, but given circumstance, their power was in fact shared with Petrograd's Soviet, or Council. The Duma would continue the war, which wasn't a great idea as people began to flock to the smaller Bolshevik party, whose leader, Vladimir Lenin, on top of promising to stop the war, promised the redistribution of land, destruction of the bourgeoisie, transfer of power to the local Soviets, and a bloody and brutal revolution. To make a long story a little shorter, October 1917 saw the Bolsheviks and their Red Army seize Petrograd in the name of revolution, forcing Russia's descent into all-out civil war.
Well, hello there, feature history guy.
My lord, is that the Indian Idol from The Great War channel, which you can find at www.youtube.com/The Great War and enjoy new videos every Monday, Thursday, and Saturday?
Yeah, it is in fact me. I came over here to tell your viewers that if they're enjoying learning all about the Polish-Soviet War and the Russian Revolution, that over on our channel we have a new video about the Bloody Baron, who forged his own interesting tale in that conflict way over on the other end of Russia.
Well, that sounds just marvelous. I think I'll be watching that myself.
Also, where did my eyes go?
Ah, don't mention it. Glad to have had you on.
I can't see.
He doesn't have eyes.
No, seriously, I can't see.
Jeez, what a nerd. As the First World War came to a close, the map of Central and Eastern Europe changed drastically. Many smaller nations had seen a chance to break away from foreign powers, and the US President Woodrow Wilson made special note on Polish independence in his 14 points presented at Versailles. The Second Polish Republic was birthed, with Marshal Józef Piłsudski at the helm. This new state, though, was a tad smaller than maybe it should have been. The Greater Polish Uprising in 1918 saw insurgents attack the weakened Germany and pressure Versailles to grant them an expanded western border. The eastern border, however, well, those writing the treaty must have skipped the question and forgot to come back to it. The Bolshevik-controlled Soviet Russia viewed states like Poland, Ukraine, Belarus, Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania as just temporary breakaways. Lenin was confident they'd come back for them, just as soon as the White Army in Russia had been defeated. Not only was this dispute a matter of de jure claims, but Lenin saw Poland as a bridge to Germany, and if the revolution was to continue, it was important the German socialist movement united with the Bolsheviks to create a communist Europe. So a freshly independent Poland was already threatened with annexation again. That didn't sit well with Piłsudski, so as the Russian Civil War dragged and the Red Army was bogged down, it seemed better to start now rather than later, and the Polish army made its first offensive in February 1919. The initial and disorganized offensive saw some victories and stalemates, being a slow but steady advance eastward. If this was to be a serious war, some work had to be done. A diplomatic effort was swiftly undertaken. Piłsudski dreamed of a federation of friendly states revolved around Poland. The support of Romania and Hungary agreed to send Poland arms, but for a military alliance, Poland only managed to befriend Ukraine, or what was left of it after the Soviets had shown up there. Diplomacy wasn't the only struggle, logistics cold. And God was she ugly. The infrastructure and army of Poland was almost like it had been built by 3 different empires. What Poland did have though was spirit. And you know, that actually did count for something. In early 1920, the Polish and Ukrainians began a southern offensive against the Red Army. Piłsudski claimed it was an effort to restore the Ukrainian state, but the fact of the matter was this alliance was purely temporary. The Polish and Ukrainians hated one another. They took some easy victories, entering the abandoned Kiev by May 1920. However, around the same time this civil war had begun to wrap up. Lenin believed it was the end of the Red Army's defensive war, and now it was time to begin an offensive one. Lev Trotsky, his Commissar of Military Affairs, disagreed with the westward charge so soon. But tough shit, it was his job to get it done. The front, from the Soviet perspective, was to be split between a northern Polish one and a southern Ukrainian one. Trotsky's job was to coordinate this joint offensive between, for the sake of simplicity, let's say, Mikhail Tukhachevsky in the north and Joseph Stalin in the south. Facing a now organized, outnumbering and direct opponent, a string of Red Army victories forced the Polish into retreat as the Soviets aimed to, in Tukhachevsky's words, move onward to Berlin over the corpse of Poland. Poland's only effective resistance was their ability to intercept Soviet orders. Using this, and their legendary cavalry, they harassed the enemy in a guerrilla-like fashion. Panic looked to grip Polish resistance, however, and Piłsudski only managed to pull in the reins at the almost final moment, as the Red Army drew nearer and nearer to Warsaw. Now the French, UK and US looked to support Poland in small ways, now seeing the threat of the Soviet advance. The Polish people also prepared to throw everything they had at the enemy, because everyone, armed with anything, was going to fight. At the same time, it seemed there was an issue in the Soviet side, because as Tukhachevsky prepared for battle, Stalin's army was still in the south, besieging Lvov. He was determined to take the glory of having seized the city, and against orders continued the siege. Stalin may have sabotaged the battle for Warsaw before it even began. Regardless though, Tukhachevsky still had a reasonable chance of taking the capital, and so Pilsudski looked to employ an audacious plan. Interestingly, the Red Army would intercept this, and thought it was so silly that it was just an attempt to deceive them, dismissing it. Once the battle commenced, every Polish person, and even some not Polish people, gave it their all in the defense of the city. Pilsudski had set up his army almost stupidly close to the enemy's south, and so when he caught the Red Army off guard and launched a counterattack, the offensive was completely disrupted, and the army routed. The Polish took a decisive and important victory. It wasn't enough to rout the Red Army though, it had to be destroyed. The legendary Polish cavalry took on the attackers of Lvov. In what would be the last cavalry battle in history, the Battle of Karoud, the Soviet cavalry, 10 times in number, were decisively defeated, destroying the once feared Red Army as an effective fighting force. At this time, Trotsky was attempting to sue for peace, presumably telling Lenin, "I told you so." The Polish continued to chase Tukhachevsky's army, leading to one last battle where Poland took one last victory. After that, both sides were deeply exhausted and Pilsudski, under the pressure of the West as well, accepted the request to negotiate. The Peace of Riga was signed in March 1921. The Polish stuffed their faces in the treaty, and did a brilliant job screwing over the Ukrainians, as Ukraine was split between the Soviets and Poland. Pilsudski himself was only able to observe, and denounced the peace as an act of cowardice. It permanently destroyed Poland's relations with neighbouring states, and made for a ticking time bomb between the Soviets and the Polish. The new eastern border was militarily indefensible and economically unviable, and this put a real dampener on their victory. Poland did achieve something a little less superficial though. In the defense of Warsaw, not only had they gate-kept their country, but also the rest of Europe from the spread of communism, causing the Bolsheviks to shelve the idea of a war for communism. They also had affirmed themselves as a new, strong, and independent Poland, one the world had not witnessed in centuries. And yes, the Second Republic did end in 1939, and they spent much time as a Soviet Republic, but that was reversible. If they had fallen in 1920, well, who's to say what would have happened? And truly it is for the best that Poland stood tall, as without that, how could I have wasted an entire month playing Witcher 3?
Okay, that is the end of Feature History Polish-Soviet War. We have not done anything on this, so that was very interesting. Thank you for the suggestion. Be sure to suggest anything else you want to see in the comments below. Great video as usual, very interesting. This guy doesn't cover like the mainstream of history, he covers sort of like smaller bits that you probably never would have heard of, which is always nice. So yeah, thank you all for watching. If you made it to the end, be sure to get your suggestions in, subscribe, and I'll see you all next time.